something with her audio. Your audio went out,
She
Jesus.
was going in and out.
Yeah, something with your audio,
Look
Jesus.
for it. She
She's still
was
at. Yeah, it was something I could tell with her phone. I don't know if she switched to.
now the lady
Mhm.
is on top of things. That's about the situation.
Drop down
Uh,
and come back up, Jesus girl. And if you have plug-in earphones, plug that into your phone. That's probably better. Or just keep it on speaker. But go ahead, Judge.
okay, while we're waiting for her to come back, let me say something about the previous topic. If you're teaching American history, recent American history, you can teach H. Rap Brown. He was a historic character with a lot of influence around the country. You can teach Malcolm X. He's a historical character. You can teach Frederick Douglass. They do that anyway. You can bring in Marcus Garvey, Du Bois, who was one of the founders, one of the three joint founders of the NAACP. You can certainly bring in Huey P. Newton, Eldridge Cleaver. You can bring in a lot of people, Angela Davis. You can bring in Elaine Brown, Bunchy Carter, etc. You can bring in Geronimo Pratt. And when you start talking about those people, you start dealing with those things that you might have been prohibited from talking about by category. Now, we study stuff to learn its lessons, and one of the lessons I would say this shows us is that we need to understand how to articulate what we are aiming at in a fashion that allows it to be put in place. Diplomatic entities, when the U.S. sits down with Russia or the previously with the Soviet Union or with the People's Republic of China, they've got a bunch of experts carefully crafting the messages that are exactly read by the diplomats in question so that the precise meaning is delivered in a way that is not going to be rejected out of hand. And we need to do that again. When we want to put something in place, we need to start consulting with the people who have been there, seen that, done that, and you might get some clues.
All right.
Add
Let me see.
that
She
with that admonition. Let's see where we're going here. Or are we to
um
go to Memphis?
yeah, I don't know. Jesus girl, you could unmute. Something was going on with your audio. I don't know if you could unmute and we could hear you, but
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
We
okay.
hear you.
Okay, was there a question for me? I'm sorry.
No,
No,
you
you
keep
you
going
got
with
cut
what you were
off.
doing.
Oh, did I?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't even know where I got cut off. What's the last thing you heard?
Oh, you didn't hear us when we were saying we can't hear you?
No, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I did not.
Oh,
Okay.
you were
We
about
Oh,
to go into the 5 points
oh my
of
God, y'all missed the whole thing. Oh my
well,
goodness.
we heard
Well,
your 5 points, but you were about to explain them.
well, I wasn't going to go into detail. That's something we can Google. That's
yeah.
something chairperson Camila Moore, Chair Camila Moore, talked about that at the Revolt Summit. So all you got to do is Google the 5 forms of reparations. But then I wanted to talk about that San Francisco initiative. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
In my humble
Roger that.
opinion, I just think that's a total distraction, especially them being in the state of California, one of the major cities in the state of California, to sidestep what's actually happening with around California Assembly Bill 3121. It's just muddying the waters, and it's ludicrous. But anyway, that's my opinion. But as far as the California AB 3121, it was authored by then Assemblywoman, as you all may know, Dr. Shirley N. Weber, who is now the Secretary of State. And we in California were the 5th largest economy in the world, not the country, but the world. And we recently got bumped up to number 4. So if Dr. Shirley Weber, out of her own mouth, said that we can afford to pay reparations by way of compensation in its various forms. And I was also talking about the interim report that came out from the task force in July of 2022. It covers 13 harms and atrocities. And so our lead economist, one of the lead economists, Dr. Sandy Darity, who's on our task force, they're at this time crunching numbers, and they're going to come up with the final amount or whatever, and all the other different forms. They're going to it's going to be more than just cash. It's going to be other forms. And then so once they come up with that final report in July, we'll have some numbers in the state of California that we can present to our legislature. And we'll go from there. But if Dr. Shirley Weber says that we can afford it, I trust her. She's the Secretary of State, and we're also the 4th largest economy in the world. And so that's all I was saying. So thank you so much for allowing me to clarify that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me say this. I think your remarks are on point. However, I don't buy into what she said. I noticed myself and some other people who were former California, with contacts with California. I grew up there, kindergarten through law school. Went back at 15 years worth of contact through that show. We have this experience where every other year or so, California will attach through some bank $150,000, claiming we owe it for back taxes, and we haven't been liable for California taxes for a long period of time, and we get it back after they've kept it 6 months, a year, and we spent several thousand in attorneys and accountants' fees getting it back. I get hit all the time. I've got a Range Rover that hasn't been registered in California since 2014, and they will attach their California fees on a bank account, and we'll have to get that set aside. And they get a lot of people's money they work with. And I noticed some of my colleagues that I recruited to law school years ago, who are judges in California now, they note that the civil courts are only open for 4 days because California can only afford to keep the civil courts open for 3 days during the week. And the judges donate a quarter of their salary back so it can be kept open for the 4th day. I'd say California is just flat broke busted, thanks in great part to Prop 13 passed in 1978 and pushed by a gentleman named Jarvis, which just bamboozled the taxpayers so they can't have a real tax reform or increase without 2/3 of the House and the Senate in the state legislative body, which is kind of awkward. But one thing I would offer to you, ma'am, and you might encourage others to do that, is a form of California unique reparations. Take a look at the state constitution as it applies to the University of California and its specific inclusion in the constitution of the word they use is colored people and other minorities specifically, and what they have to say about it and why they say those things need to be done. And I think we will have some language that might be persuasive for at least some form of restitution by way of affirmative action that would be legal under the California Constitution. When Bakke got decided, they studiously ignored that constitutional provision, but I would direct you to do that as a form of immediate relief.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was too much static in the background. Go ahead, Jesus girl.
Okay, I'm going to jump in right here. Judge Brown, I dare not refute anything that you say by way of facts and how you've seen things in the state of California. I don't have that. I don't have that authority. However, I will say that there are some other measures that are being taken to move us toward reparations, particularly around what you're speaking of, that colored people thing, and how the fact that we are all, I'm speaking of the descendants of.
Can you mute your phone, Judge? Mute. Stirring grits in the pot, honey. Go ahead.
I talk so loud. I talk over all little noises, so I don't hear it. But anyway, you mentioned the UC Constitution and affirmative action, which is a great thing. I definitely will look into that as it relates to the color people thing. You know, we have a lot of titles, but black, colored, all this, and so SB 189 is a disaggregation bill that extracts the descendants of chattel slaves from all people of color and all these other things that they have us, thrown in this big pot. SB 189, you guys can Google it. It won't take effect until maybe 2024 or 2025. But that was a major, major thing that happened in the state of California, because we need to be in a class by ourselves. And so they're also, as we may know, working on the census, and giving us our own box finally. Oh my God, we people of color, you name it, Negroes. We done went from black to colored. We done been everything except who we are. And so I definitely will look into that. I will definitely look into that, and I'm going to wrap up my little comment here. But I just want to say that Judge Brown, you make so many, many wonderful. You're definitely a historian in your own right. And so, like I said, it would be just unwise of me to refute anything that you say. But I do feel like in my own heart that this is it's a different season. It's a different.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you. Let me just say this. The way colored is used in the California Constitution, it says is our Chinese brethren, et cetera, being subject to the control of Tong gangs, etc. Then it gets to our colored brethren who have escaped from the horrors of slavery, who live here free from, et cetera, its sordid effects. They all need, and this is the interesting thing, leadership. So in order to deal with this, we must establish programs that allow them to acquire what is necessary to exert leadership over their respective communities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when they talk about colored, it's specifically talking about slaves and former slaves. So it is not people of color with everybody lumped in. It is a specific category, and it's an exemplar of how a category has been co-opted late to be all inclusive when it was not, when it came up. Colored, Negro, Black, Afro-American, Black, African-American, etc. That's the way it used to be. NAACP, National Association of Colored People. You see, that kind of usage. So I'm not trying to go the old way. I'm just taking it for where you can look it up, because people need to do that. I went over to the law school about 15 years ago at UCLA, and they never heard of it until I took some of them to the library and showed it to them. But it's a device.
Thank you, Jesus girl.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Judge Brown. This helps me so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I want to go into the Memphis police. So Memphis police announced 5 Memphis Police Department officers involved in the arrest of Tyre Nichols have been following the officers have been terminated. To Darius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills Jr., and Justin Smith. The Memphis police posted a statement, which is in Facebook. It says, the Memphis Police Department has concluded its administrative investigation into the tragic death of Mr. Tyre Nichols. After a thorough review of the circumstances surrounding this incident, we have determined that 5 Memphis Police Department officers violated multiple department policies, including excessive use of force, duty to intervene, and duty to render aid. So they broke down what happened. So here's what we know about the case right now. January the 7th, Memphis Police Department says officers stopped Tyre Nichols for reckless driving near Rains and Ross Road in Hickory Hill. Police say as they approached him, a confrontation occurred and he took off running. After a pursuit, officers claim another confrontation occurred before taking Nichols into custody. Family says the second confrontation happened on Castlegate Lane, just yards from where he lived and under a Skycop camera. The police say Nichols did complain of shortness of breath and was taken to St. Francis Hospital in critical condition. Nichols' family says the incident made him go into cardiac arrest, left him with a broken neck, and he suffered from other medical issues. On January 10th, he died in the hospital. So who is Tyre Nichols? He was 29 years old. His family says he was 6'4", 145 to 150 pounds. He leaves behind a 4-year-old son. Family says he's never been in trouble. He liked to take pictures and loved to skateboard. He was infectious, the type of guy that everywhere he went, he left an impact. They say he had a pure soul and loved helping people. He worked at FedEx. The company released a statement and said, "We are deeply saddened by the tragic loss of our team member." Shelby County District Attorney Steve Melrose immediately asked the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations to conduct an independent investigation into the use of force by Memphis police officers. January 9th, his office sent an email stating they plan to publish the redacted results on the SCDAG website when the findings are complete. January the 15th, Police Chief C.J. Davis and Mayor Jim Strickland released a joint statement stating the officers involved in the incident have been served notice of impending administrative action. Davis also stated she reviewed various sources of information involving this incident. On January 16th, Nichols' family retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump. He stated, "All of the available information tells us that this was a tragic and preventable death of a young man deeply beloved by his family and community. Nobody should die from a simple traffic stop, and the footage is the only way to discern the true narrative." On January 17th, the city issued a statement saying the video will be released publicly after the completion of the internal investigation into the actions of the officers, after Nichols' family has had an opportunity to review it privately. They have not said what type of video from the incident exists, but they are arranging to meet with Nichols' family next week. On the 18th, United States Attorney Kevin G. Ritz announced the U.S. Attorney's Office, in coordination with the FBI and the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, opened a civil rights investigation into the death of Tyre Nichols. Should I go into internal review?
No, I can't really talk about it too much because I'm going to be elected mayor and it's going to land in my lap by the time that election occurs this year. So I don't want to muddy the waters of what I'll have to do to deal with it. I will say this, that all 5 of the officers involved are young Black men. So it's not a component of white officers murdered a Black man with blue uniforms on. These are all young Black officers. And the victim is a young Black person. The chief of police is Black. The mayor is a jerk, but I'm going to be replacing him. So we'll get around that. Mulroy is the brand new district attorney who just got elected this August after what has been styled the most corrupt DA in America lost her bid to retain her office. So we will see what happens. One driving engine as to why so much has been done, and I don't say it has anything to do with the merits of the case, but one of the family members who is pushing a lot of the protest is in fact chairwoman of the Young Democrats here in the area, and she is pushing a narrative that he was scared, which is why he ran. So I'll leave it at that. Other than to say that right now we've got one mess that some people are trying to push, And there have been a number of things put out on local social media about stay at home. There are going to be riots and uprisings and all of that, which is not the indication from this area. The event took place not far from where I live, over here on Range Road. And I'm quite familiar with the circumstances. So I would say this, there aren't going to be any necessary riots or anything over here. That is something that's being pushed. There's also another current under here that you should be aware of that has nothing to do with the immediate circumstance. So, most importantly, none of the officers involved were white. They were all young black men. 2, not all of these officers are alleged to have participated in the wrongdoing. Some of them are alleged to have not intervened in it. So we should take that into consideration. And I would say, be patient and see what goes on. All
They
right.
said
Now,
they said the employees can appeal any decision made with the
yes,
Civil Service Commission. But I mean, black, white,
I
it don't
pointed
matter.
that
They're
out with
blue.
you. I
Mhm.
pointed that out to you that the matter is not over because all of the officers involved have civil service appeal.
Well, since you're not going to talk about this case or this situation specifically, but the thing is, whether they're black or whether they're white, they're blue. And what if somebody runs or not run, any other case besides this case we could talk about. But the fact is, when they're trying to paint a narrative, well, that person ran because they're scared. All right, say if that is the case, but why that person does not need to end up dead.
Well, I say this. I have represented some serious crooks. All right. And I understand them running to escape from apprehension. I had a lot of those. But I would offer this so you don't get put in this kind of position. Be brave and don't run if you're not trying to get away. All right? Stand your ground.
If you did run, does not mean you should end up dead or beaten.
No, it doesn't. But as I said, I'm not going to comment about it.
We're not talking about Memphis. We're not talking about Memphis.
I know, but anyway, let's just put it this way. As I've said, there are always other sides to it. And wherever you are, it's not a good idea to run unless you are trying to escape. Now, we got taught that, and I grew up in Los Angeles, California. And if you grew up when I did, and you ever dealt with Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, those were not nice guys back when. And we just knew, hey,
all right,
you got to deal with what you got to deal with.
I want to bring
That's
in.
how we got taught.
I just think police officers, even with the black woman being punched in the face at McDonald's, all right, she already was in handcuffs. Why you punch her in the face?
It happens. Look. May I say this? You have to deal with the fact that right now, to keep up viewership, there is a big interest in sensationalizing a lot of stuff. If you want to see what's going on, divide 2 people by 360 million. You get a very, very small fraction. And anytime you have 360 million people in a country, and that's not inclusive of the illegals, 340 to 360 million people illegally here, and they aren't sure how many. You're taking a very, very small percentage of the people and you're trying to make a generalization. Now, there are some patterns that occur, but right now, it ain't nowhere near as bad as it used to be.
All right, I want to go to Cadillac.
Hey Dana, thanks for letting me speak. Shout out to
Hey.
you and the co-host, Judge Joe Brown. Um, I thought I'm quite sure that I seen a Supreme Court precedent that states that if you run from the police, they pretty much can shoot you and assassinate you. Am I right, Judge?
That's not quite the case. It has to be under circumstances where there is an indication that if they let you escape and a felony is likely to have been committed, you pose a high danger to the rest of the public. We have an allegation set out in California. Some alleged 72-year-old Asian who shot himself in a van when he got cornered, allegedly, had attempted a second repeat of an earlier crime where he shot 20 people, killed 10 of them, and then was attempting to break in another place of a similar nature, and he got disarmed by civilians who were present on the scene to keep him from repeating the first incident. Now, if there had been police on the scene and that person had attempted to escape, then had they not taken measures, there is a probability, a possibility, a likelihood, however you want to characterize it, that this dangerous individual might have continued the episode to the detriment of the public security. That's what they're talking about. Now, a case comes out of Memphis. It's from 1974 when I was here practicing law, and it was resolved in the late 70s, where in Memphis, some kid was fleeing from a scene. He was climbing a chain link fence, and one Memphis officer came up, calmly unholstered his revolver, took careful aim, and shot him in the back several times while he was on the fence and killed him. So the issue came to head, could that force be used? So actually, Memphis basically set the precedent for what can be done. Now, you can't use deadly force as a cop, generally, absent the consideration that failure to do so may subject you to great bodily injury or death personally, or to a third party being subjected to great bodily injury or death. So when the police use deadly force, they have to be able to show that there is a relationship to other people in the public, because once these things start, they have a responsibility to protect third parties.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there is a consideration in the law about what happens when you escape from custody. Now, to get a handle on that, the easiest illustration is what would happen if you were in a detention facility with armed guards around the perimeter and you have not been convicted of a crime, but you attempt to escape from that facility. Are they going to be able to shoot you while you attempt to escape from the facility? The answer generally is yes, they will be able to. So if you have somebody that's already in custody and they are attempt to escape from custody, depending on what they're in custody for and what the circumstances are, may dictate whether or not deadly force can be used. It depends upon the circumstances of the individual case. Now, that's important. There is no real fast rule other than that the officers are only entitled to defend their lives or defend the lives of others.
I want to go to Stepper, and then I want to bring up the Aretha Franklin
Yeah,
article.
yeah. And I definitely understand what the judge said, but that even would actually pinpoint that these officers need to be in jail immediately. With all of that being said, the reason why they need to be in jail immediately because number one, this started off as a traffic stop. So if we're talking about felonies and people in danger, that would justify many killings and arrests that do happen. But in the cases that we're seeing, the cases that I've overseen the police brutality, I don't. Well, for the most part, we all know police are liars when it comes to police reports. That's the number one issue, and they end up investigating themselves. Police retire, they become a part of the complaint review board, or they become part of the internal affairs, and they end up looking at cases defending themselves. So the only thing we usually have, the only thing
Your
we usually
audio
have
is
is
not.
body cam. Yeah, the only thing we usually have is body camera footage. Um, so the law is also not going to protect us because guess what? Many of the officers are going to try to avoid being transparent on police reports and incident reports. They're going to try to write themselves out of the situation, and they're going to investigate themselves. But in this case, all we are aware of is that a man is dead. Unfortunately, if that's not enough benefit of the doubt, hopefully the traffic stop is another benefit of the doubt that this was not a justified action. Now, if we want to make up random scenarios in our head, that's not the law. If we want to assume that the officers were justified, that's not the law either. Um, but what is the law is when somebody is in police custody, none of the officers were shot, none of the officers were harmed. We can put one plus one equals two. Police traffic stop, police custody, and dead body. Immediately, yes, those officers were fired. But the results, you're not gonna have bruises all over your face and head. Um, and if you are arrested or even if you're put into custody. The only way that can happen is if you're punched repeatedly, meaning there was excessive force. That's the only way that's gonna happen. If an officer is gonna struggle to take you down, um, you might have like maybe one scar, but that's gonna be the end of. You're not gonna be consistently punched, and even if you are, policy says that you're still not even allowed to continue to go full MMA on somebody. You're supposed to use your taser and restraint and call for backup and do what you can. Unfortunately, that's what most policy and procedure is. That's the force of good police work. They have shown that they can do that in most cases of when white people they know the law, but when it comes to black people, they throw the law away and they all of a sudden become criminals.
Well, let me add you this little background circumstance. Memphis is becoming the murder capital of the country. And one of the big problems is people who have been killed, injured, shot because somebody was engaging in what initially looked like reckless driving, trying to chase them at high speed down the street. I have a personal acquaintance, a very attractive female, who was on a main street and she got chased at high speed down the street for quite a few blocks by somebody in a vehicle she had no acquaintance with. That person turned off and sped off at a high speed, and a couple of cops got behind him and they lost him. Now, we have had incidents where there are a lot of shootings from cars. We have another problem, people getting in intersections and doing donuts, which is a little crazy. So I'm not saying that all of the considerations should be abrogated, but this is getting pretty tense in this city in terms of a lot of things going on, and a lot of people are just flat scared to be outside. It's gotten so bad, and that's not from the police. That is from something else, fear of their fellow citizens. So you have to take that into consideration. Now, that doesn't excuse anything, but sometimes tensions get ramped up. People don't get in fights like they used to. 50 years ago, if you were 25 years old, you'd been in a bunch of fist fights in your life. Nowadays, a lot of people, including the cop, may have never been in a fist fight, And this is just a totally freaky situation that they're confronted with when somebody is out there and they have to restrain somebody. That's just one of those developments in our society. Now, I would say, let's see what happens and where this goes. And sometimes when a cop gets fired, he stays fired. Sometimes when all of it gets developed, he doesn't stay fired. So let's see how this works out.
I want to swing to Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin's song Natural Woman blasted by transgender activists. One activist group in Norway is calling for Aretha Franklin's hit 1968 song You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman to be removed from both Apple Music and Spotify after they deemed its lyrics offensive. The Transculture Mindfulness Alliance took to Twitter last week to condemn the ballot, citing that it has ignited harm against transgender women. They quote saying Aretha Franklin's 1968 song Natural Woman perpetuates multiple harmful anti-trans stereotypes. The organization tweeted, "There is no such thing as a natural woman." The message continued, "The song has helped inspire acts of harm against transgender women. TCMA is requesting it is removed from Spotify and Apple Music." So they're saying there's no such thing as a natural woman.
They have a saying in law. It's called res ipsa loquitur. Res, R-E-S, ipsa, I-P-S-A, loquitur, L-O-Q-U-I-T-U-R. It speaks for itself. And in extremely negative fashion, that speaks for itself. Now,
And if anybody want to request to come up, please do so. Go ahead,
a
Judge.
natural woman is how I got here, how everybody that's listening got here, how all of our ancestors got here, so that somebody is a drag queen pervert coming out of that kind of bag is a whole different thing. Now, you can be whatever you want, but let's not get absolutely ridiculous. And this, again, is an assault on free speech, First Amendment stuff. And we have to be vigilant so we do not have our free speech rights stripped away from us. I'm reminded again, and I'll say it again, 55 years ago, I had a visiting Russian professor. She said, America is in grave danger of becoming a fascist nation, not from some jackboot wearing, goose stepping uniformed thugs, but from, as she put it, some pink panty wearing, long haired beatniks who will try to protect you from yourself by stripping your rights away. And that's exactly what we're getting right here. This is deplorable for that to be called for.
Right. But I think what I'm surprised at, like, where do you get the audacity to sit up here and say what should and should not be played because it does not fit your specific group or gender? There are a lot of songs that were created specifically for a sex, a culture, then how about what somebody's gonna say, well, ban James Brown, I'm black and I'm proud, because it's specifically talking about black and anti everybody else. It seems so. Where does this group get off trying to dictate what you call someone, what is not natural, what is natural? They have this term cis, and they're using that to replace the word heterosexual, as if I'm supposed to accept that. Like, why do they think we have to accept their agenda or their ideology? As long as I'm not, harming or going against your civil rights, why do you get the leisure or the power to try and go against other people's civil rights? And again, if you want to request to come up, do so. This is the last topic we're talking about. And if you want to request to talk about anything else we talk about, please request now. So yeah, like, why do they feel comfortable dictating their ideology on everybody else?
Read Animal Farm by Orwell, and if you don't want to read it, there's a verbatim animated recitation that the CIA put out in 1952. You can Google it, Animal Farm, and you can download it and look at it, and you'll see what's going on. All animals are equal, morphed into all animals are equal, but pigs are more equal than others.
No, I get all that, but who?
I think it's because of us. I think it's because Black people, we've let them head behind civil rights. And we allowed them to take over and literally take over our movement and dictate things when it comes to sexuality and gender. And we've gotten them comfortable. Even the white people are extremely comfortable, who are racist, to hide behind civil rights and sexual equality and liberation. I think it's mostly, I don't know, like heterosexual people, we see things like black and white, but for the people who are, I guess the same thing has happened to liberals and their politics and Democrats and their politics. We've gotten comfortable thinking people are our allies when they're just having a particular agenda to try to push their particular politics when it comes to gender, sex. And we spoke about this earlier. And when it comes to the curriculum, they come through with, "Oh, we're gonna help you liberate yourselves as long as you look at the men as women and the women as men." And the woman, I think a lot of our Black sisters have supported that and have been okay with that, because when you see a gay man, you go ow ow, but when you see a masculine man, it's like you turn your head, like there's no compliments behind that. So I think the sisters have gotten a little bit comfortable behind that particular agenda, and they feel comfortable.
I think
I'd like to go ahead and speak about Aretha Franklin.
Can you give me a minute? Because I was coming to you next, Lisa.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that, Stepper. All right, so Lisa, you could go, but I do want to respond to you, Stepper. But go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Banning that song has nothing to do with black or white. We are being attacked as heterosexual females. A cis is someone that is born a female and stays liking men. And, we women, regardless of race, have to come together. And, it's our responsibility to fix things that are happening now so that our children don't have to deal with this. Imagine if this starts happening and it gets done and it keeps getting done and it gets more lax. Imagine what we're leaving in 20 years, And so whether we get t-shirts to say we're women, real women, I think everybody else is getting out there with what they want to promote. And it's very important that we promote the beauty and the naturality and all the things that we bring into this world as women. So that's all I wanted to say on that. I enjoy listening.
Ma'am, you said a lot. Thank you for saying it.
I do want to say this though. Yeah, I do agree that women need to make sure that we promote womanhood, but at the same time, men need to promote womanhood as well. To Stepper, when you were saying you kind of want to blame women, I guess, did you say particularly Black women? But
because it came
No, I
No, no,
said
we're not talking to
stepper.
you. White woman. Hold on, we're
Don't
not
Wait,
call
talking
me
to you.
don't
that.
don't
I
call
have
her
a
white
name.
woman. Her name is
Uh,
Lisa. Her name is Lisa.
Nah,
We're not
nah, nah.
doing that.
She's a white woman.
We're not doing that. Don't play with me. We're not doing
Young
that.
brother,
Her name
young
is
brother,
Lisa.
she's a woman, and she's insulted by this attack too.
Exactly. So, and if you want to address
So,
somebody,
and it's
everybody
an
has their name up
and
here.
it's an ally.
Like I was gonna say, it came
Yeah.
through the civil rights movement. It didn't come through other movements. It came through other Black liberation movement. That particular agenda. Now, in terms of her being white, she said it had nothing to do with race. Yes, it did. We are about empowering Black women, but and through that, there are people who are narcissists, like white people. Most white people are narcissists when they come in Black spaces.
Okay, but Lisa
I think
Lisa
we
wasn't
need to
coming in here as the
ally.
narcissist.
And she's not. She spoke truth about the circumstance, and truth has no face but truth itself.
Right. So what I'm saying is
You know.
that I agree with what Lisa was saying. I just think not just women should be promoting womanhood, but the men need to promote womanhood. And it's funny though, because trans women are people that used to be men. So it's a lot of you men that date secretly, have sex with secretly these trans women or on the down low. And, so you're not going to publicly push womanhood because what you're doing in the closet yourself, or you're actually transitioning yourself. So, and then you have this facade of a lot of people that I see who are not gay, or not LGBT, but I do starting to see a lot of males who simply have little disregard for women, period. So we're not going to get that support from them. But let me just set this room. Nobody don't come up here disrespecting somebody else, especially if you're not being disrespected. I don't care what color or what gender that they come from. Everybody has a name. You see it. Call them by their name. I'm not tolerating that disrespect because that's not pro-Black. That's not pro-nothing. That's just pro-disrespect.
All right. Here's
RDG,
the other thing.
Okay.
You've spoken on that, Dana. That was eloquent. Now, let's have a modicum of respect for each other. Sometimes we have common cause. If you don't get what that means, take a picture of World War II history in your mind and look at Winston Churchill sitting next to FDR, sitting next to Joe Stalin. Their objective is to take out Adolf and Tojo. So,
Right.
you can add all kinds of allies in here. Now, one of the problems we have is that mainstream media has been captured by this element. So a lot of what they're putting out there, a lot of the propaganda that we have to be subjected to is sending a message. And what you need to deal with so you understand it is Joseph Goebbels, minister of propaganda for the Nazi Party, said it very eloquently. Tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anybody to believe it. Now, by the way, going back to our first topic, that may have a great deal to do with Florida, but I won't belabor the point. It's just negative propaganda against any one group has a way of coming back and ass biting everybody involved. So this is negative propaganda against womanhood, which is just absolutely absurd by some people that have a mental health issue. We can't allow that. This is an illustration of this is why we fight. And my motto on that was protecting womanhood and promoting manhood.
All right, I want to go to RDG and then Real Time Black and then LD. Go ahead.
I'm going to continue listening. I just came into the room. I did want to just mention quickly regarding the music, Aretha Franklin. I think sometimes we get these outside arguments to force Black people to make additional arguments so that we can create a situation because the Black voice is very powerful actually in the country. And so like say the Star Spangled Banner, if you read the lyrics to completion, the song that we've been singing, it talks about, slavery. It kind of points to Black people and crushing who we were, and in that sense, and we still sing that song. And so perhaps they want us to kind of, up in that, so that we can start peeling away at the Constitution, because once we open up that door, we can't close it again. So I'll land my plane.
Okay, thank you. Real time.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tim Black. I just came to join the space. I appreciate you guys having this space. I just want to point out that when we talk about these types of issues, got to be very careful that we're not putting everyone into one bucket. What I mean by that is hearing some like statements made where people are blanket type statements. Look, we're talking about 7% of the population. 7% of the population identifies themselves as LGBTQ. This is a small group of people, comparatively speaking. Then when we start breaking down what those groups are, as it goes to ADOS or Black folks, however you want to label that, we're talking about even much smaller amount of Black Americans. My main beef is with this legislation. I just became aware of the Aretha Franklin song. That's ludicrous. But what DeSantis did out there in Florida, as I was writing an article in response to that, preparing for some commentary, I then realized that there were things in that bill that were not focused on Black Americans. Now, Black history should not be included, or should I say LGBTQ issues, though they may be relevant, and I want to be supportive, they should not be included with Black issues. Those are separate tenets. They deserve their own buckets. LGBTQ issues should stand on their own. Won't they include LGBT issues with European studies or with Asian studies? So that's my first gripe, and I think this is something we could collectively push back on. And I'm glad to see Judge Joe Brown in the House. I'm sure he'll use his platform to and probably he already has voices.
We did. That was the first thing we talked about.
Yeah, I just came in late, but it's something that I'm working on right now. So, but I also want to be distinct here now. Remember, there are other things within that coursework, right, that are Black specific. That's why it's the dirty trick. So then they slide in some other issues that aren't outside of ours. The majority of people do not know what is involved in that coursework. That's what I've come to understand as I've been over the internet looking at this issue. They have not delved into the coursework. They've been gaslit to believe that DeSantis, even though I do think DeSantis is a bigot, don't get me wrong, but they've been led to believe that he is banning it because of the Black studies. Maybe so. That's for his constituents. That's the raw meat he throws to the white supremacists. But the issue that I have
a question real quick. I have a question for you. Do you think that, because I totally agree with what you're saying, but my theory is that they intentionally slide in LGBT not to feminize Black people, but to also, if you slide in queer theory or LGBT studies and into Black studies, right? You knew that this governor or the Florida government was going to come in and say, no, you can't do that. And how about we just get rid of the whole thing? So let's just say you have the Democrats, you sliding in this CRT or this LGBT, connecting it to Black studies, knowing that you're not supposed to, or knowing that it has nothing to do with Black studies, to muddy the waters to get rid of the whole thing. See, sometimes people who seem at odds are actually collective working together to eliminate one group, which would be to eliminate us Black people.
Well, I'm not going to say that.
I agree with you, sir.
I think that's possible, but I think it's more simplistic, as in this is what they typically do with us, right? Every group gets leverage using Black suffering and Black pain. So they use us to get in the door, and then they put in, whether it be for the feminist movement, whether it be for the Asian protect the Asian policy that just passed last year, or whatever the issue is, they use Black as the disguise to say, hey, if you go against this, you're going against Black folks, and then you're able to then tack on the other side, tack in these other issues that you want to support. Look, man, the amount of people that are identifying as this has grown exponentially. If you go back, you look at millennials, there were 10%, 10% for Gen X, that went to like 12% or 14% for millennials. Gen Z, we got almost 20% of Gen Zs self-identifying themselves as LGBTQ. So I don't know if that is a correlation between if they're really being pushed towards this sort of narrative, or are they just feeling more comfortable to come out? Because this is always existed. It's always existed in these bathhouses or what have you. It just wasn't publicized. So now people feel more comfortable in being who they are. That's possible. So I don't want to out of hand dismiss that. But that's really all I have. Thank you. I'll land my plane here.
All right,
Thank you.
sounds good. Let me add this to the mix.
After you, Judge, I'm gonna go to LD.
Perhaps LGBTQ is a cult, and we're confusing or conflating LGBTQ with all gays. A lot of gays don't support LGBTQ, like all Islamic followers do not support ISIS or Al Qaeda. Now, back to the other thing. 56 years ago, it was in Meyerhall Park on UCLA's campus. 1967 is when I first heard public statements of the plan to do just this, which is to co-opt and insinuate themselves into certain movements, those who had a particular vendetta against manhood for various reasons, and they were going to use that to negatively propagandize manhood. You had those who hated men. Those were the lesbians. You had those who hated they weren't men. That was feminists. Those who hated that they weren't strong men. That's the beta boys. Those who hated that they weren't normal men, the gay boys. And you had the anti-war crowd who hated that war was supposedly a man thing. So it went downhill from there. And they got control of the entertainment media, then politics. And as you have said, sir, they get into a thing where they put each other into a mix where they use back and forth and catchphrases in order to put something in. But it's still about this fact that fundamentally what they're trying to do is destroy the First Amendment unless it applies to their cause, and we can't let that happen. That's what we have to keep in mind.
LD.
You talking to me? Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to agree with you on what you said. I feel like when it comes to issues like this, which is totally propaganda, the
Your
black
phone
community
is going in and out.
they can't come together because of closeted homosexuals.
Wait, your phone is going in and out. The connection is going in and out. The audio.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
It's a little bit better. It's just, can you find a better spot where the connection is a little bit better?
Can you hear me now?
Much better.
All right. I feel like with this Aretha Franklin whole thing, this is propaganda. Like Judge Brown was saying, to eliminate our First Amendment rights. And the reason we as a community, male and female, can't come together to put it down is because of this whole gender war, which is propagated by closeted homosexuals, male and female alike, who are manipulating confused people or people that have social issues and turning them against each other. And that's it.
Right. I agree with you on that. Because
here's one. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because, what Lisa was saying, I agree with what Lisa said when she came up here. And yeah, women need to start, don't feel like you are shunning transgender women or, but promote natural womanhood, just womanhood, period. But at the same time, you men need to do it too. But what is going on, which is not talked about, which is denied publicly by men, is the fact that a lot of men do cuddle up to transgender women. Because if it was a transgender man, which do exist, that is not talked about, that are not trying to get into, you don't see a transgender man trying to be the first into whatever sport. You don't see that. It's all pushing on the women. So I want to know, why is it that men also need to step up and support natural women as well?
The Census Bureau says 0.3 to 0.5% of the country is tranny, transsexual, transvested. They say that right at 1% are lesbian, 1.5% are homosexual males, and about 4% are bisexual on occasion, and that adds up to a very small percentage of the American population. But part of the propaganda methodology that's been long established is to take a very, very small segment of the population and get the rest of the population to get the rest convinced that this small segment is a majority, like Walt Disney, like let's say Marvel Comics dedicating 50% of their characters being this way would give the upcoming generation an idea that it's about 50-50, which it is nowhere close to that. Another problem is they are not teaching boys and girls 101 A and B in school, never really have. They're not teaching it in society, and they're not teaching it in the media, and they're not teaching it in the homes. And there is a big problem that I can see as a product of this mess and a driving engine of it at the same time. That is 25 and under. There are more boy virgins in America than there are girl virgins, and that's pretty equal across the board for all ethnicities and races. That is ridiculous. So, in other words, girls are giving up more than most boys are getting. And all of the ones that are getting it tend to be a small group. That feeds into a driving engine to push homosexuality because people want sexual relief and they don't know how to get it the normal way, so they deal with it the deviant way. And I said deviant and I said normal because I'm sorry. I just put down a pair of reading glasses. My eyes are not normal now. I can't read without reading glasses, but that doesn't mean I want to get everybody else to require glasses in order to read or to see. But it is what it is, and we need to deal with it. Now, it's not what brings about more people, but you might consider that one of the objectives that we find out there is people are worried about the population problem in an overpopulated planet, and maybe they're trying to do something subtle to cut back on population increase by cutting back on desire to be with the opposite sex. But that doesn't work out because the people cannot long survive if they are divided. And what bigger divide is it than between male and female?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
as far as the virgin thing, I don't disagree with that, but there are different variables that go under that. So no one could give an exact number because that number will be skewed, especially if you break it down to age groups. But at the same time, yeah, there may be more heterosexual male virgins, because I said heterosexual. Because if you are a male and you're sleeping with another male, or if you're sleeping with a transgender and you never had sex with a heterosexual woman, you may consider yourself still a virgin. So you have to account those people in that group too. And where I'm getting at is,
but I don't. If you haven't had sex with the opposite sex, you still a virgin. Because
right. So
what do you wait? What do you have sex for?
No. That's what I'm saying.
No, I'm saying.
Listen, what the point that I'm trying to make here, if you have not had sex with the opposite sex, if you are a male and you have not had sex with a female, you saying you consider them a virgin, which is probably one of the variables why you have more male virgins than female virgins, because some of these male quote unquote virgins, how we describe it, are sleeping with another male or a transgender woman. But that conversation is not being talked about. That is something that is quiet. That is something that men don't want to discuss. Women don't want to discuss it, that is a problem, because you also have a lot of males, especially young boys, being molested at a young age by a grown male. And then they grow up to do the same thing. That is something that is not talked about. Forget about it being talked about in the Black community. It's not talked about in American society. So it's a lot of factors as to why are there less male, why are there more male virgins? There's a lot of variables that go into that.
Well, I talk about it all the time. If you read my tweets on this forum, you will see that. Some other people do too. We get suppressed because we don't control the media. Now,
LD had
that
his
is
hand
a
up.
reality. Okay, LD, let's hear from you.
Unmute yourself, LD.
Oh, I wanted to say, can you hear me? Am I good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to say you so on point with what you said about the young males. That's why as men, we gotta I feel like we need to really address the rape culture that is prevalent in America with females, because until we address that and find some type of solution or move through it, we can't begin to address how many young males are molested and raped.
Right.
And that is a huge problem. And I'll just land there.
Exactly, because it's not talked about, and so when you say this statistic headline of there are more male versions than females, it's not because these males are waiting for marriage. It's nothing to romanticize. It is something dark and nasty and deviant that is going on to them. Something is happening to them that should not be happening.
I don't give them that excuse. Yes, it happens, but that's not the excuse. They just too damn lame to get laid because nobody's teaching them. They don't have a daddy in the home. They don't have a daddy as a next door neighbor. They don't have any manhood in the hood, and they don't know how to get over.
Right, which leads them to be exposed to predators.
But that's not even the point. Punk out is punk out. And we got clowns. I interviewed one of them. What's his name? Malik Yoba. He was trying to tell me he was straight, but he what did he put it? Chicks with tits and dicks. I said, you know this and you have sex with them? Yeah, but they're women. I said, how in the hell are you going to have sex with somebody with a penis and not call yourself gay? Get over it, dude. And he bailed on us. That was on the Friday show I do with Valerie Denise. Now, that is one of the things right now is the artful use of flipping the script with the language. Language has its intended interpretation, and we cannot let these clowns go around and change our language, our lexicon in 5 years, so that what meant something 5 years ago means the exact opposite next year. That is what they are doing to us, and we can't let this happen. That's why we need to fight.